People have secrets, some dark, some bizarre. Picture, if you will, a man named Talbot Carl, an ordinary man living in the 1870s, a business owner, consumed by a secret so peculiar that it would make your skin crawl. A secret that was about to become all too real. In the back of a rickety old taxi, Talbot would often sit, sipping his juice as if it were a fine tobacco, his mind plagued by the strange drawings of his son, Kenny Carl. These weren't ordinary doodles of a young mind, oh no. They were terrifying depictions of a character named Sheen from the cartoon universe of Jimmy Neutron, which is bizarre and breaks logic. When this takes place in the 1870s, something is terribly wrong about this situation. And to make it worse, this Sheen was different. He was tiny and smiling, but dead inside, looking up. And giant cartoon girls came out of nowhere and towered over him. They looked like Trixie Tang and Veronica from Fairly Odd Parents, laughing cruelly, playing with him as a toy as their voices echoed, and they giggled it was wrong. They seemed less like human girls and more like malevolent cosmic entities wearing humanity as a costume. It was absurd, monstrous, and deeply uncanny. These drawings terrified Talbot. The thought of his neighbors discovering his son's bizarre creations was unbearable. He didn't even want to even be near his family because they kept saying it was normal, and he knew it was evil. He could feel the judgment, the ridicule. Even worse, that people thought it was beautiful. He could see his wife and daughter start to change, and his son becoming their prophet. He could hear the whispers behind his back to accept it. This was only the beginning of his nightmare. One fateful day, the taxi driver, a man named Parsley Jones, turned to Talbot and uttered the words that would change everything. "So when were you going to tell me about Tiny Sheen?" he said, showing him Kenny's drawings. Those words, "When were you going to tell me about Tiny Sheen?" would go down as the most iconic phrase in cinematic history and change the world forever. Kenny's drawings have infected Talbot's reality. In a horrifying turn of events, as Talbot rushed home in a panic, Kenny's drawings were sprung to life, summoning the giantess beings of beauty and dark malevolence, capable of killing gods and turning men into toys. The giantess fantasy transformed their home into a Lovecraftian hellscape, where pure evil was unleashed on humanity like an evil ritual, like Lovecraft's Old Ones. Then it turned into the terrifying world of the dreaded planet Sheen, a show so horrible it would drive gods and demons insane, with its crude animations and eerie 3D animated characters. Consumed their reality, it was true cosmic horror. And then the unthinkable happened. Talbot, after seeing the terrifying concept of Planet Sheen, morphed, broke and warped his psyche, turning him into the tiny Sheen from his son's drawings. His body shrank, his features distorted, and his voice pitched high. It was horrifying. He laughs crazily, looking crazy and screaming. His transformation was complete. He was now Tiny Sheen, smiling and dead inside. In this new, terrifying reality, Talbot, now Tiny Sheen, found himself at the mercy of Trixie Tang and Veronica, the giantess creatures from Kenny's drawings. They loomed over him, their laughter echoing ominously, their intentions clear. Then Talbot's son, Kenny, in a moment of betrayal, said a sacrifice was needed, and that Tiny Sheen was the perfect conduit. The tiny men needed an unbeliever to sacrifice so they could appeal to their giant goddess monsters. In a desperate attempt to save Tiny Sheen, Parsley arrived in his taxi, now transformed into a colossal robot armed with lasers. He waged war against Kenny and his tiny men disciples, hindering the ritual and taking out Kenny and his tiny men cult, taking them out in a brutal epic battle. But even this wasn't enough to combat the eldritch forces at play. Parsley perished in a CGI explosion that was badly animated. It was caused by the giantess overlords, leaving tiny Sheen to his animated fate. Amidst the chaos, Talbot's mind waged a war of its own. He was torn between accepting his new form and fighting against it. He saw Kenny's ghost urging him to embrace his transformation. But Talbot would not yield. He fought his son and emerged victorious, refusing to be reduced to a tiny man. But the battle was far from over. In his subconscious, Talbot found his mind being corrupted by Lovecraftian supercomputer, turning men into tiny beings who worshipped giant women and engineered entertainment to have these beings be desired and worshipped, and that by doing so, men could have everything they ever desired. A council of tiny men tried to force him into submission, but Talbot stood his ground, refusing to surrender his humanity and to sacrifice his life for worshipping beautiful god monsters. In a climactic battle, Talbot faced off against his tiny Sheen form, freeing himself by emerging through a gateway back to the taxi he once knew. But the nightmare was not over. The giantesses, Trixie and Veronica, appeared once more, their giggles ringing in his ears. Parsley's laughter was ominous as he revealed himself to be tiny Sheen all along. And so, Talbot's journey through this Lovecraftian hellscape came to a chilling end. He had experienced the unimaginable, the bizarre, the horrifying. His transformation into tiny Sheen and his journey into a world of eldritch horrors had marked him forever, a reminder of the dark and bizarre secrets that lurk in the shadows, waiting to come to life, and the horrifying words, "When will we know if we will turn to tiny Sheen ourselves?"